The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime on the 40th floor of the Grandeur Hotel Seoul. Jae-won Kim stepped inside, his black suit perfectly tailored, his expression carved from stone. At 38, he commanded respect with a single glance. The kind of respect that came from power, from fear, from being the man who controlled half of Seoul's underground empire. He pressed the button for the penthouse. The doors began to close. Then a hand shot through the gap. The doors stuttered open again. A woman stepped in, pulling a small child behind her. Jae-won's finger hovered over the close button, his jaw tight with impatience. He didn't look up. He never looked at anyone anymore. Not really. The woman pressed the button for the 35th floor. The child, maybe 5 years old, clutched a stuffed rabbit and stared at him with wide, curious eyes. The elevator lurched upward. That's when Jae-won made the mistake of turning his head. His breath caught in his throat like a knife. Juliet. She stood there, her back pressed against the opposite wall, her dark skin glowing under the fluorescent lights. Her hair was shorter now, natural curls framing her face. She wore a simple navy dress, nothing like the elegant gowns she used to wear when she was his wife. Her eyes, those same deep brown eyes that once looked at him with love, now reflected only shock and something else. Terror. The child tugged on her mother's hand. Mommy, why did you stop breathing? Juliet's lips parted, but no sound came out. Jae-won's gaze dropped to the little girl. Round cheeks, curly black hair, and eyes. God, those eyes. Almond-shaped, dark, intense. His eyes. The elevator jolted violently. The lights flickered. Then everything stopped. They were trapped between floors 37 and 38, suspended in a metal box with nowhere to run. And the past Jae-won had spent 6 years burying was standing 3 feet away from him, breathing the same air. The child spoke first. Mommy, why did the elevator stop? Juliet pulled her daughter close, her voice shaking. It's okay, baby. It's just a little malfunction. They'll fix it soon. Jae-won pressed the emergency button. Once, twice, nothing. He grabbed his phone. No signal. Of course, the universe had a sick sense of humor. How old is she? The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Juliet's head snapped up. Don't. How old? That's none of your business, Jae-won. His name on her lips after 6 years felt like a punch to the gut. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to that dangerous tone that made grown men confess their sins. How old? The little girl looked between them, her rabbit drooping in her small hands. I'm 5 3/4. My birthday was in March. March. Jae-won's mind calculated backward, fast and brutal. 9 months before March. June. 6 years ago. June. That was when Juliet was 8 months pregnant. When he had signed the divorce papers. When he had watched her walk out of his life. Her hand on her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face. When he had believed she had betrayed him. His knees almost buckled. Her name is Sophie, Juliet said quietly, her voice thick with unshed tears. And she doesn't know who you are. So please, just stay on your side of the elevator. Sophie. He had wanted to name their daughter Sophie. They had talked about it late at night, her head on his chest, his hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. They had laughed about whether she would have his stubbornness or her mother's kindness. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The air in the elevator grew thick. Jae-won leaned against the wall, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. He stared at Sophie at every detail, the way she fidgeted with her rabbit's ear, the tiny mole on her left cheek, the shape of her nose, all his, she's mine. It wasn't a question. Juliet closed her eyes. Jae-won, don't do this. Not here. Not now. Answer me. Does it matter? Juliet's voice cracked. You made your choice 6 years ago. You decided I was a liar. You decided our baby wasn't worth fighting for. So no, she's not yours. She's mine. I raised her. I fed her. I held her when she cried. Where were you? The words hit him like bullets. Each one deserved. Each one true. Sophie tugged her mother's dress. Mommy, why are you crying? I'm not, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired. But she was crying. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. And J1 remembered the last time he saw her cry. In his office. Begging him to believe her. Swearing on their unborn child's life that she had never cheated. That the evidence was fake. That someone was lying. And he had turned his back on her. The elevator groaned. Metal scraping against metal. Sophie whimpered and buried her face in her mother's stomach. Juliet wrapped her arms around her daughter, but her eyes stayed locked on J1. You want to know the worst part? Juliet whispered. I still loved you that day, even when you threw me out, even when you called me a whore in front of your entire family. I still loved you. How pathetic is that? J1's fists clenched. Juliet. No. You don't get to say my name like that. Not anymore. You lost that right when you chose to believe your sister over your wife. His sister. Minji. The name alone made his blood run cold now. But back then, she had been his confidant. His blood. The one person he thought would never lie to him. He had been so wrong. The elevator's emergency light flickered on, casting shadows across their faces. Sophie looked up at him again, her fear melting into curiosity. Are you a bad man? She asked, her voice small but direct. The question gutted him, out of the mouths of children. He knelt down slowly, carefully, until he was at her eye level. Up close, there was no denying it. She was his daughter. Every feature screamed it. I used to be, he said, his voice rough. I made a terrible mistake a long time ago, and I've regretted it every single day since. Sophie tilted her head. Did you say sorry? If only it were that simple. If only a child's logic could fix what he had broken. Not yet, but I will. Sophie, come here. Juliet's voice was sharp, protective. She pulled her daughter away from him, creating distance in the small space. J1 stood, his legs unsteady. The elevator felt like it was closing in, the walls shrinking. He pressed the emergency button again. Harder this time. Still nothing. They were going to be stuck here. With the truth. With the past. With the daughter he didn't know existed until 3 minutes ago. Why didn't you tell me? His voice broke on the last word. Juliet laughed, but it was bitter and hollow. Tell you? I tried, J1. I called you 53 times in the week after you threw me out. 53. You blocked my number. I came to your office. Your security threw me out. I sent letters. You returned them unopened. So forgive me if I didn't try harder to tell the man who destroyed me that his daughter was born. 53 times. He didn't remember blocking her number, but he must have. Those first few months after the divorce were a blur of rage and alcohol and trying to bury the pain so deep it could never surface. I didn't know, he said weakly. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. She was right. God, she was right. He had wanted to hate her, needed to hate her, because hating her was easier than admitting he might have been wrong. Easier than facing the possibility that he had destroyed the only good thing in his life over a lie. Sophie sat down on the elevator floor, her rabbit in her lap. She started humming a soft tune, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. J1 recognized the melody. It was a lullaby Juliet used to sing. She had sung it to her belly when she was pregnant, her hand making slow circles over their baby who was now sitting right in front of him, alive and real and perfect. What's her favorite color? He asked suddenly. Juliet blinked. What? Her favorite color. What is it? Purple. Why does that matter? Her favorite food? J1, stop. Does she like school? Does she have friends? Is she happy? His voice rose with each question, desperate and raw. Juliet's eyes flashed with anger. Yes, she's happy. No thanks to you. She has friends. She loves art class. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. She's smart and kind and funny, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. And you don't get to walk back into her life just because you're trapped in an elevator with us. The emergency speaker crackled to life. This is hotel security. We're aware of the malfunction. Maintenance is on their way. Please remain calm. We'll have you out in approximately 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Half an hour trapped with the ghost of his biggest mistake. Sophie looked up. I have to go potty. Juliet's face paled. Can you hold it, baby? I don't know. Maybe. Try, okay? We'll be out soon. This was hell. This was his punishment for every sin he had ever committed, wrapped up in a broken elevator with terrible timing. J1 loosened his tie, the silk suddenly suffocating. He had faced rival gangs, corrupt politicians, men who wanted him dead. He had stared down the barrel of a gun more times than he could count. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this. Tell me what I need to know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Please. Juliet studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed, the fight draining out of her. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with the day she was born. She hesitated, then slowly sank to the floor, her back against the wall. Sophie crawled into her lap, and Juliet wrapped her arms around her daughter like a shield. It was July 15th, 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in a part of town you've never seen. No money, no job, 7 months pregnant and alone. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script. I went into labor at 2 in the morning. I didn't have a car, so I took a taxi to the hospital. The driver refused to wait, said he didn't want blood on his seats. J1's hands curled into fists. Juliet. I almost didn't make it inside before my water broke. The nurses thought I was homeless at first because of how I looked. Dirty, exhausted, scared. They made me wait in the emergency room for 45 minutes before someone finally checked me. I was already 8 centimeters dilated. He couldn't breathe. The image of her, alone and suffering, was ripping him apart from the inside. Labor lasted 14 hours. No epidural. No family. Just me and a midwife who barely spoke English. And when Sophie was born, when they put her in my arms for the first time, I looked at her face and I saw you. Juliet's voice finally cracked. I saw you in her eyes, and I hated you so much in that moment, because she was perfect, and you weren't there. You were supposed to be there. A tear rolled down J1's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. I named her Sophie Grace. Sophie because it was what we wanted. Grace because I needed to believe there was still grace left in the world after what you did to me. Sophie, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. Mommy. Are you telling the story about when I was born? Yes, baby. Tell him about the bunny. Juliet smiled through her tears. A nurse gave her this rabbit. It was from the hospital's donation bin. It was old and raggedy, but Sophie wouldn't let it go. 5 years later, and she still sleeps with it every night. J1 stared at the worn stuffed animal in Sophie's hands. It should have been something he gave her. Her first toy. Her first memory. Instead, it was a charity rabbit from a hospital donation bin because her mother had nothing. Because he had left her with nothing. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate, but they were all he had. Sorry doesn't change anything, J1. It doesn't give me back the nights I cried myself to sleep. It doesn't erase the time Sophie asked me why she doesn't have a daddy like the other kids. Sorry is just a word. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. You can't. Juliet's voice echoed in the small space making Sophie flinch. She immediately softened, pressing a kiss to her daughter's head. You can't fix this. Some things stay broken. The elevator shuddered again, and the lights went out completely. Sophie screamed. Juliet held her tight, whispering reassurances. Jae-won pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. It's okay, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The lights will come back on. You're safe. Sophie looked at him, her eyes wide and wet. Promise. How could he promise anything to this child? He had already broken every promise that mattered. I promise. And somehow she believed him. She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. The emergency lights flickered back on, dim but functional. Jae-won sat down on the floor across from them, his expensive suit be damned. They were all sitting now, a broken family in a broken elevator. When Minji showed me those photos, he said slowly, when she told me you were cheating, I wanted to kill someone. Not you. Never you. But whoever had touched you. I was ready to burn the world down. Juliet's jaw tightened. There was no one, Jae-won. There was only ever you. I know that now. Do you? Or are you just saying that because you're trapped here with the consequences of your choices? That hit hard because there was truth in it. If he hadn't gotten in this elevator, if he hadn't seen Sophie, would he have ever questioned his past? Would he have lived the rest of his life believing the lie? I found out 3 months ago, he admitted, that Minji lied, that she manipulated everything. Juliet's eyes widened. 3 months? You've known for 3 months and you never tried to find me. I didn't know where you were. You disappeared. No forwarding address. No trace. I looked, Juliet. I've had people searching for you ever since I found out the truth. Bull. The word came out sharp and angry. You have the resources of an empire. If you wanted to find me, you could have found me in an hour. She was right again. The truth was uglier than that. He had looked, but not hard enough. Part of him had been afraid. Afraid of what he would find. Afraid that she had moved on. Afraid that he had destroyed any chance of redemption. Afraid that she would look at him exactly the way she was looking at him now. Like he was a stranger. Like he was the villain in her story. Because he was. How did you find out? Juliet asked quietly. About Minji's lies. Jae-won ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion suddenly crashing over him. Her best friend, Hannah. She got drunk at a family dinner and let it slip. Said something about how Minji was so clever to fake those photos. I thought I heard her wrong, but she kept talking. Said Minji hired someone to Photoshop you into compromising pictures. Paid off a doctor to create false medical records. Even had someone impersonate you on phone calls to make it look like you were having an affair. Juliet's hands trembled. Why? Why would she do that to me? I was never anything but kind to her. Because she wanted me to herself. Because she saw you as competition. Because she's sick and twisted and I was too blind to see it. His voice turned venomous. She wanted control of the family business. She knew as long as I had you, I had a weakness. She knew I would choose you over the empire. So she took you away. And you let her. Those 4 words hung in the air like an execution. Yes, Jae-won said, his voice breaking. I let her. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. Instead, I trusted blood over love, and it cost me everything that mattered. Sophie, who had been listening quietly, suddenly asked, Are you my daddy? The question stopped time. Juliet's breath hitched. Jae-won's eyes filled with tears he couldn't control. Sophie, baby, that's a complicated question. Juliet started, but Sophie interrupted. You said my daddy made a mistake. He made a mistake. You're sad and he's sad. Are you my daddy? Jae-won looked at Juliet, silently begging for permission to answer. She closed her eyes and gave the smallest nod. He turned to Sophie, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'm your daddy. And I made the biggest mistake in the world. I wasn't there when you were born. I wasn't there for your first steps or your first words or when you learned to ride a bike. I wasn't there because I was stupid and angry and wrong. And I'm so sorry. Sophie stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You look like me." A broken laugh escaped him. "You look like me too. You have my eyes. And my nose. And your nose. But I have Mommy's smile. The best smile in the world." If you're enjoying this story, do us a favor and hit that like button. It helps us bring you more content like this. And don't forget to drop a comment telling us what you think will happen next. Sophie climbed out of her mother's lap and took a tentative step toward him. Juliet reached for her, but Sophie dodged her mother's hand. She stood in front of J1, so small and brave and curious. "Can I hug you?" she asked. The question broke him completely. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Sophie wrapped her tiny arms around his neck, and J1 held his daughter for the first time. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. She fit perfectly in his arms, like she had always belonged there. "You're crying," Sophie observed, pulling back to look at his face. "Yeah, sometimes adults cry when they're really sorry. It's okay. I forgive you. If only the world worked on 5-year-old logic. If only forgiveness were that simple, that pure, that immediate." J1 looked over Sophie's head at Juliet, who was watching them with an expression he couldn't read. Pain, anger, maybe a sliver of something that looked like hope. The speaker crackled again. "We've almost got the elevator moving. Stand by." Their time was running out. Soon the doors would open, and this moment, this forced reckoning would end. Juliet would take Sophie and disappear again, and he would be left with the knowledge of what he had lost, unless he fought for it. "Come work for me," he said suddenly. Juliet's head snapped up. "What?" "You and Sophie. Move into one of my properties. I'll give you anything you need. Money, security. I'll set up a trust fund for Sophie. Private school. The best of everything. You think you can buy us?" Juliet's voice turned icy. "No. God, no. I just want to help. I want to be part of her life. Part of your life. I know I don't deserve it, but please, give me a chance to make this right." "Make it right?" "J1, you can't make this right. You can't throw money at 6 years of abandonment and call it fixed. Sophie doesn't need your money. She needs a father. The problem is, I don't know if you know how to be one." Her words cut deep, but they were fair. He had been a boss, a leader, a criminal. But a father? He had no idea how to do that. The elevator jerked and began moving upward. Slowly at first, then gaining speed. The 35th floor dinged. "This is us," Juliet said, standing and taking Sophie's hand. Panic seized J1's chest. "Wait, please, just give me your number. Or an address. Something. I can't lose you again." The doors slid open. Juliet stood in the threshold. Sophie pressed against her side. And for a moment, J1 thought she would just walk away. Let the doors close. Let him disappear from their lives as quickly as he had appeared. But she turned back. The Riverside Apartments. Building C. Apartment 312. She said it quickly, like if she hesitated, she would change her mind. "I work from home most days. Sophie goes to Sunshine Academy on weekdays. If you're serious about this, about being in her life, then prove it. But if you're going to hurt us again, if you're going to walk away when things get hard, then don't bother showing up at all. I won't hurt you again. I swear it. Your swears don't mean much to me anymore. J1, let your actions speak." She stepped off the elevator. Sophie waved at him, her bunny dangling from her other hand. "Bye, Daddy." The word hit him like a freight train. Daddy. He was somebody's daddy. The doors closed, and J1 collapsed against the wall, his legs finally giving out. He had gotten in this elevator as a man who had convinced himself he was fine, that he had moved on, that the past was the past. He was getting out of it destroyed. The elevator continued to the penthouse, but J1 couldn't remember why he had been going there in the first place. Nothing mattered except the bomb that had just gone off in his carefully constructed life. When the doors opened again, he stumbled out and pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands shook as he dialed a number he had hoped he would never have to call again. "Minji," he said when she answered, his voice deadly calm. "We need to talk. Now." He hung up before she could respond. Then he called his head of security. "Get me everything you can find on Juliet Harrison, where she's been for the last 6 years, what she does for work, her medical records, everything. And I want it in an hour." "Sir, is everything all right?" "No, nothing is all right. Just get me the information." He ended the call and stood in the empty penthouse suite he had rented for a business meeting that no longer mattered. Below him, Seoul spread out in a blanket of lights, millions of people living their lives, unaware that his had just imploded. He had a daughter. Her name was Sophie, and she had forgiven him before he had even finished apologizing. Jae-won walked to the window and pressed his palm against the cold glass. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment building on the riverside, his ex-wife was putting their daughter to bed, reading her stories, kissing her forehead, doing all the things he should have been doing for the last 6 years. But that ended now. He wasn't going to be the absent father. He wasn't going to be the man who had thrown away his family. He was going to fix this even if it took the rest of his life. Even if Juliet never forgave him, Sophie deserved a father. And Minji deserved to pay for what she had done. The next morning, Jae-won stood in the conference room of his downtown office building, waiting. His sister arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. She smiled when she saw him, that same smile that had fooled him for years. "Appa, you said it was urgent. What's wrong?" He didn't return the smile. "Sit down." Her expression faltered. "What's going on?" "Sit down." Minji sat, her hands folding primly in her lap. She was 34, beautiful, elegant. She had learned how to manipulate people from their father, who had been a master at it. But Jae-won had learned from the same teacher, and he was done being played. "I saw Juliet yesterday," he said, watching her face carefully. Minji's eyes widened slightly. "Juliet? Your ex-wife? Where?" "In an elevator. She had a little girl with her. 5 years old." The color drained from Minji's face. Oh, that's all you have to say? Oh, Appa, I don't know what you want me to say. I'm sorry you had to see her. That must have been awkward." "She's my daughter." Minji stood abruptly. "You don't know that. Juliet probably told you that to get money from you. She's manipulating you again. That's what she does. Sit down." His voice cracked like a whip, and Minji dropped back into her chair. "I'm not an idiot, Minji. I did the math. I looked at her face. She's mine. Which means everything you told me 6 years ago was a lie. I didn't lie. I showed you proof. The photos, the medical records, everything. Fake proof. Photoshopped pictures. Forged documents. You manipulated me into destroying my own family." Minji's jaw set stubbornly. "I protected you. Juliet wasn't good enough for you. She was going to make you soft. She was going to ruin everything we built. I did what I had to do to save you from yourself." "Save me?" Jae-won laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You destroyed me. You made me throw away the only person who ever actually loved me. For what? Control? Power? What was worth making me lose my daughter? You were choosing her over the family." Minji shouted, standing again. "You were going to leave the business. You were going to walk away from everything because of some woman. I couldn't let that happen. She wasn't some woman. She was my wife, the mother of my child. A child you didn't even know existed until yesterday. So don't pretend you cared about her that much. You moved on. You've been fine for 6 years without them. That was the final straw. Jae-won moved faster than his sister could react. He didn't touch her, didn't have to. He simply stood in front of her, his presence alone enough to make her shrink back. I have not been fine, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I have been empty, hollow. I threw myself into this business to forget what I lost. I became the monster you wanted me to be because I had nothing left to be human for. You didn't save me, Minji. You killed the best part of me. And for that, you're going to pay. What are you going to do? I'm your sister. Blood. You gave up the right to call yourself my sister the day you destroyed my family. Effective immediately, you're removed from all positions in the organization. Your assets are frozen. Your security clearance is revoked. You're out. Minji's face twisted with rage. You can't do this. Father wouldn't have allowed it. Father is dead. I'm in charge now. And I'm done with you. You'll regret this. Without me, you're vulnerable. You need me. I need people I can trust. And that's not you. He walked to the door and opened it. 2 security guards stood waiting. Escort Ms. Kim out of the building. She's not to return. Minji stared at him, shock and fury warring on her face. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. She stopped next to him, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You think Juliet will take you back? You think that little girl will ever really see you as her father? You're fooling yourself. You're still the man who threw them away. That doesn't change just because you found out the truth. Maybe not, Jae-won said quietly. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better, which is more than you'll ever do. Minji left without another word. The door closed behind her, and Jae-won stood alone in the conference room, his heart pounding. One problem solved. Now came the harder part. That afternoon, Jae-won stood outside the Riverside Apartments, staring up at Building C. It wasn't a bad place. Clean, modest, safe. But it was nothing compared to what he could provide. What he should have been providing all along. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and found apartment 312. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What if Juliet had changed her mind? What if she had only given him the address to be polite, but didn't actually want him showing up? He knocked anyway. Footsteps inside. The door opened a crack, the chain still attached. Juliet peered out, her eyes widening when she saw him. You actually came. You thought I wouldn't? I didn't know. She closed the door, and he heard the chain slide free. When it opened again, she stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger like this, softer, more like the woman he had married. Can I come in? She stepped aside. The apartment was small but cozy. Toys scattered across the living room floor. A child's drawing taped to the refrigerator. The scent of something cooking in the kitchen. It was a home, a real home, something his penthouse had never been. Sophie ran out from a hallway, saw him, and stopped. Daddy, she said it so easily, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he had been her daddy all along. She crashed into his legs, hugging him tight. Jae-won bent down and picked her up, holding her close. She was so light, so fragile, so perfect. I made you a picture, Sophie announced, wiggling to get down. She ran to the kitchen table and grabbed a piece of paper covered in crayon scribbles. It's us. See? That's me, that's Mommy, and that's you. 3 stick figures holding hands. A child's version of a family. It's beautiful, Jae-won said, his voice thick. You can keep it if you want. I want. Juliet watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. She didn't look angry, just cautious, guarded, waiting to see if he would prove her right or wrong. Sophie, go wash up for dinner, Juliet said gently. But I want to talk to Daddy. You can talk to him during dinner. Go wash your hands. Sophie ran off and Juliet turned to J1. You staying for dinner? If you'll let me. I'm making spaghetti. Nothing fancy. That's fine. They stood in awkward silence. 6 years of pain and hurt and unspoken words between them. Finally, Juliet sighed. Did you confront her? Your sister. This morning. She's out. Completely. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She tried to justify it. Said she was protecting me. He shook his head. I can't believe I was so blind. You weren't blind. You were manipulated by someone you loved. There's a difference. Juliet moved to the stove and stirred the pot of sauce. But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't undo the last 6 years. I know. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking for a chance. To be in Sophie's life. To prove I can be the father she deserves. Juliet turned to look at him. And what about me, J1? You keep talking about being Sophie's father. But what about us? What about the fact that you broke me? That I spent months picking up the pieces of my life after you threw me away. I know I hurt you. Hurt me? You destroyed me. I was pregnant and alone and terrified. I had no money, no family, no one. Do you know what that's like? To be that alone. No, I don't. And I'm sorry. I will spend the rest of my life being sorry. Sorry doesn't pay rent, J1. Sorry doesn't put food on the table. Sorry doesn't hold your hand in the delivery room. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. I'll do anything. Juliet's eyes filled with tears. There's nothing you can do. You can't go back in time and fix it. You can only move forward. And I don't know if I can move forward with you in my life. Because every time I look at you, I remember how much you hurt me, how you didn't believe me, how you chose everyone else over me. I was wrong. Being wrong doesn't make it hurt less. Sophie came running back in, her hands still dripping wet. Daddy, can you read me a story after dinner? J1 looked at Juliet, asking permission with his eyes. She hesitated, then nodded. Sure, sweetheart, he said. I'd love to. Dinner was strange, domestic, surreal. Sophie chattered the entire time, telling him about school, her friends, her favorite TV show. J1 listened to every word, memorizing the details. Juliet stayed quiet, watching them interact with an expression that was equal parts heartbroken and hopeful. When dinner was over and Sophie ran off to pick out a book, Juliet finally spoke. She likes you. I like her too. She's amazing. She is. Juliet stood and started clearing the dishes. But J1, you need to understand something. If you're going to be in her life, you have to be all in. You can't show up when it's convenient and disappear when it's hard. She's already lost you once. I won't let her lose you again. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. You promised you'd love me forever too. Promises don't mean much to me anymore. The words stung, but he deserved them. He stood and helped her with the dishes, the silence between them heavy but not hostile. Sophie appeared with 3 books. I couldn't pick just one. J1 smiled. Then we'll read all 3. They sat on the small couch. Sophie squeezed between them. J1 read the first book, stumbling over some of the words because his hands were shaking. Sophie corrected him, giggling. Juliet read the second book, her voice soft and melodic. And then Sophie insisted they read the third book together, switching off pages. By the time they finished, Sophie was yawning, her eyes drooping. Time for bed, baby, Juliet said. But I'm not tired. You're falling asleep sitting up. Come on. Sophie hugged J1 goodnight, her small arms tight around his neck. Will you come back tomorrow? If your mom says it's okay. Sophie turned to Juliet with pleading eyes. Mommy, can he? Please. Juliet looked at J1, then at their daughter. We'll see. Sophie seemed satisfied with that answer. She let Juliet carry her down the hall to her bedroom. J1 stood awkwardly in the living room, not sure if he should stay or go. Juliet returned a few minutes later. She's out like a light. Kid could sleep through a tornado. She's incredible. You did an amazing job raising her. I did it alone. I know. And I hate that you had to. But I'm here now. Let me help. Please. Juliet sat down on the couch, exhaustion written all over her face. What do you want from me, J1? Forgiveness? Permission to be a dad? Or do you want more than that? He sat down next to her, careful to leave space between them. I want all of it. I want to be Sophie's dad. I want to support you. And if I'm being honest, I want a second chance with you. I know I don't deserve it. I know I have no right to even ask. But I never stopped loving you, Juliet. Even when I hated you, I loved you. And finding out that I was wrong, that I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing, it's killing me. Juliet wiped at her eyes. You can't just walk back in and expect everything to go back to the way it was. I'm not the same person I was 6 years ago. And neither are you. I know. But maybe we can figure out who we are now. Together. I don't trust you. I'll earn it back. That could take years. I have years. Juliet stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the door. You should go. It's late, and I have work in the morning. J1 stood, disappointment crushing his chest. But he had pushed enough for one day. He walked to the door, pausing in the threshold. Can I come back tomorrow? To see Sophie? Yeah, she'd like that. And you? Would you like that? Juliet's expression softened. Just a fraction. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. And for now, that was enough. Before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've got more stories like this coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Over the next 2 weeks, J1 showed up every single day. Sometimes he brought flowers for Juliet. Sometimes he brought toys for Sophie. Sometimes he just showed up empty-handed, ready to do whatever they needed. He learned Sophie's bedtime routine, her favorite snacks, the way she liked her sandwiches cut into triangles. He learned that she was terrified of thunderstorms but loved the rain, that she could draw for hours without getting bored, that she had his temper but her mother's patience. He learned how to be a father, and slowly, carefully, Juliet started to soften. She smiled more when he was around. She let him help with dinner. She didn't flinch when his hand accidentally brushed hers. One night, after Sophie was asleep, they sat on the balcony of the apartment. The city lights spread out below them. I got a call from my lawyer today, Juliet said quietly. About what? Apparently, someone made a very large deposit into my bank account. 6 years worth of child support, plus interest. J1 looked down at his hands. You and Sophie deserve to be taken care of. I don't want your money, J1. It's not about what you want. It's about what's right. I should have been supporting you both all along. Let me do this. Juliet was quiet for a long time. Then she said, okay, but only because Sophie deserves it. Not for me. Juliet, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. I want to take care of both of you, not out of obligation, because I love you. I never stopped loving you. Don't say that. Not yet. Why not? It's the truth. Because love wasn't enough before. You loved me 6 years ago, and you still threw me away. So excuse me if I need more than love. I need trust. I need consistency. I need proof that you won't destroy me again the next time someone tells you a lie. I will prove it. Every single day. For the rest of my life if I have to. Juliet stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I should get to bed. Early morning tomorrow. Wait. J1 stood too. Can I ask you something? Do you still love me? Even a little bit. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. I need to know, because if there's even a chance, I'll fight for it. But if you're completely done with me, tell me now. I'll still be here for Sophie, but I'll stop hoping for more. I don't know what I feel anymore, J1. Part of me wants to hate you. Part of me wants to forgive you. And part of me is still in love with the man I married. But I don't know if that man even exists anymore. He does. I'm trying to be him again. The man you fell in love with. Before the business and the power and everything else corrupted me. It's late. You should go. He wanted to argue, to push, to make her admit what he saw in her eyes. But he had learned that Juliet needed time. So he nodded and left, but not before pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. She didn't pull away. A month passed. Then two. J1 became a fixture in their lives. He picked Sophie up from school. He attended parent-teacher conferences. He took her to the park and taught her how to ride a bike without training wheels. And with every day, the walls around Juliet's heart cracked a little more. Until one night, when he was leaving after putting Sophie to bed, she stopped him at the door. "Stay," she said quietly. "What?" "Stay. For a little while longer. We can talk, or watch a movie, or just sit. I don't want you to go yet." So he stayed. They sat on the couch, not touching but close enough that he could feel her warmth. They talked about everything and nothing. About Sophie's upcoming birthday. About the weather. About a funny thing that happened at work. And then, in the middle of a sentence, Juliet started crying. "Hey, what's wrong?" J1 turned to her, alarmed. "I'm tired," she sobbed. "I'm so tired of being angry at you. I'm tired of holding on to this hurt. I'm tired of pretending I don't want you here all the time. I'm tired of fighting how I feel." "Then stop. Stop fighting it. I'm scared. What if you hurt me again? What if I let you back in and you leave?" "I won't. I swear on Sophie's life I won't." "You can't promise that. Watch me." J1 took her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I love you, Juliet Harrison. I have loved you since the day I met you. I will love you until the day I die. I was a fool to let you go. I was a coward to believe the worst of you. And I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you give me the chance. Please, give me another chance." Juliet closed her eyes, more tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm scared. I know. I'm scared too. But we can be scared together." She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him. And whatever she saw there must have been enough because she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and tentative and tasted like tears and hope. J1 kissed her back, careful and gentle, like she was something precious that might break. When they pulled apart, Juliet was smiling through her tears. "If you hurt me again, I will destroy you. I'd deserve it." "Yes, you would." They sat there, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. And J1 felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Peace. Sophie's 6th birthday party was small but perfect. Just a few of her friends from school, held in the modest community center near their apartment. There were balloons and a homemade cake and way too much sugar. J1 showed up with a gift so large that Sophie screamed when she saw it. It was a custom playhouse, complete with working lights and a little mailbox and curtains in the windows. "J1, this is too much," Juliet protested, but she was smiling. "Nothing's too much for our daughter. Our daughter." The words still felt new, but they were getting easier to say. Sophie spent the entire party showing off her dad to her friends. "That's my daddy. He's really tall, and really strong, and he knows how to fight bad guys." J1 wasn't sure where she had gotten that last part, but he didn't correct her. When the party was over and the last guest had left, Sophie crashed on the couch, frosting smeared on her face and happiness radiating from every pore. "Best birthday ever," she mumbled before falling asleep. Juliet covered her with a blanket and then took J1's hand, leading him to the balcony. "Thank you," she said, "for all of this, for showing up, for trying. I should be thanking you, for giving me a second chance." For letting me be Sophie's dad. You're more than her dad now. Juliet smiled up at him. You're part of our family again. Does that mean you forgive me? She thought about it for a moment. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It's something you choose every day. And I'm choosing it. For Sophie. And for me. And for us. I'll take it. She laughed. You don't have much choice. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She fit against him perfectly like she always had. Like she always would. I want to marry you again, he said softly. When you're ready. I want to do it right this time. A real wedding. With Sophie as our flower girl. And no lies. No manipulation. Just us. Juliet looked up at him. Ask me again in a year. If we make it a year without killing each other, I'll think about it. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. I'll take it. They stood there as the sun set over Seoul, the city transitioning from day to night. Somewhere below them, millions of people were living their lives. Fighting, loving, breaking, healing, just like them. 6 months later, Juliet said yes. Not to marriage. Not yet. But to moving in together. She and Sophie packed up the small apartment and moved into a house J1 had bought. Nothing ostentatious. Just a comfortable home in a good neighborhood with a backyard where Sophie could play. They fell into a rhythm. Breakfast together. School drop-offs. Work. Family dinners. Sophie's homework. Bath time. Bedtime stories. The mundane routine of a normal family. And it was everything. J1 had walked away from most of his criminal dealings, transitioning the family business to legitimate enterprises. It was slower, less lucrative, but he could sleep at night knowing he wasn't putting his family at risk. Minji tried to challenge him a few times, attempting to regain control, but without support from the organization, her efforts fell flat. She eventually left Korea entirely, and J1 didn't waste energy wondering where she went. He had more important things to focus on, like the little girl who insisted on pancakes every Saturday morning, like the woman who still sometimes looked at him with guardedness in her eyes but was slowly, steadily learning to trust him again. 1 year to the day after he had gotten trapped in that elevator, J1 took Sophie and Juliet back to the Grandeur Hotel. They rode the elevator to the 40th floor, the same elevator where everything had changed. Why are we here, Daddy? Sophie asked, clutching her now very worn rabbit. Because this is where I got the greatest gift of my life, he said. I found out I had a daughter, and I got a second chance with your mom. Juliet smiled at him, her eyes soft. You're so dramatic. I learned from the best. When they reached the 40th floor, J1 got down on one knee. Sophie gasped. Juliet's hand flew to her mouth. It's been a year, he said, pulling out a small velvet box. You said to ask you again in a year, so I'm asking. Juliet, will you marry me? Again? For real this time? Sophie started jumping up and down. Say yes, Mommy. Say yes. Juliet looked at him, tears streaming down her face. You're really doing this in an elevator? It felt appropriate. She laughed and cried at the same time. You're insane. Is that a yes? Yes. Yes, you stubborn, dramatic, wonderful man. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss. Sophie squealed and hugged both their legs. The three of them a tangled mess of limbs and love and laughter. The elevator doors opened, and an elderly couple waited to get on. They took one look at the scene and smiled, stepping aside. Congratulations, the woman said warmly. Thank you, J1 replied, grinning like an idiot. They exited the elevator, a family now. Whole, healed, not perfect but real. As they walked through the hotel lobby, Sophie skipped ahead, her rabbit bouncing with each step. Juliet threaded her fingers through J1's, squeezing gently. Are you happy? She asked. Happier than I deserve to be. Good, because you're stuck with us now. Best trap I've ever been in. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. We hope you loved the story as much as we loved sharing it. Don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment about your favorite part, and subscribe so you never miss another story. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply hurt you? Let us know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the biggest lies create the opportunity for the greatest truths. See you in the next story. 6 years after a lie destroyed his marriage, a Korean mafia boss found himself trapped in an elevator with his ex-wife and the daughter he never knew existed. By the time the doors opened, his carefully constructed life had crumbled. But from the ruins, something better emerged. Not perfect redemption, because some scars never fully heal, but second chances, hard-won forgiveness, and the kind of love that survives even the worst betrayals. Because some lies destroy empires, but the truth can rebuild families.